So thank you all for coming out. You know, when I took my little dog out for a walk this morning, I panicked. But it's fine, eh? It's fine. We won't have record temperatures, but we do have a very good turnout, and we do appreciate it along the beautiful shores of our bay and this beautiful parkland here. So, and what I'm saying thank you to, one other thank you, these lovely fall flowers that have been brought to us today by Barber's Flowers. The fourth generation, you know, people interested in history love this, but the Barber Flowers store has been around for 4 generations. So, thank you for coming out. The weather is acceptable. Thank goodness for that. And I must start off by pointing out just one big feature. Our chairman, the man who started this process and the man who put so much energy into it for 2 years, is watching it from a room over here in the Belleville Hospital. Roli Tipper, who was our chairman, had a gallbladder attack on Friday, and so he's, God love him, he's doing well, but he, of all, you know, his timing, he's always been bad for some reason. Anyways, today we've come together in these wonderful settings. We're celebrating 2 things. First of all, we want to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the discovery of insulin for the treatment of diabetes in humans. 100 years ago, there's a small group in a very simple laboratory working away in Toronto come up with this amazing discovery. And we here in Belleville and in Quinte, we have extra reason to celebrate because the person who made that key final breakthrough was one of our own, a Belleville man, Dr. Collip, James Bertram Collip, always called just Bert, who made that final discovery. And he went on, beyond that, he went on to become, for the next 40 years, one of Canada's greatest scientists ever. He opened advanced and internationally acclaimed schools at McGill University and then at University of Western Ontario. So he had a magnificent career, and it all started right here. We just drove by the Belleville Market. You can imagine young Bert there selling vegetables then, just as it is today. So it's an amazing, amazing story. So we're going to begin today with our little introduction. Is that feedback? We okay? Okay. Anyways, I'm going to ask Kathleen Manderville to come forward as we're seated in this magnificent location by our beautiful bay in this wonderful country, and to lead us in the singing of O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Quand un bras se portait le pays, il se portait la croix. Ton histoire d'une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
We have many, yes, please sit down, I'm sorry. Yes. My mother always told me, watch your manners. But anyways, we have some special guests with us today that I want for our folks from Belleville to recognize. And we're deeply honored to have with us the great-grandson of Dr. Collip, a direct descendant, Major Charles Wyatt, who has come with his family from San Antonio, Texas, from the United States. Following in a long tradition, Major Wyatt is with the Brooke Army Medical Center, which is an immense medical facility in Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio. And it's the largest medical facility in the United States Defense Department. So we're so pleased. And with him is his wife, also Major Laura Wyatt. Also at the medical center. And we're doubly honored today to have the, where are we now, great-grandchildren of Dr. Collip in the person of their children, Dylan and Kylie Wyatt. They've traveled a long way for this event, and it certainly is very much appreciated by all of us here. We hope you enjoy yourself. We have with us a very special guest also, who will be our guest speaker in a few moments, Dr. Alison Lee, who is an author, historian of science and medicine, and with a great deal of concentration on hormones and all things related to that. Dr. Lee. Dr. Lee is also the author of a definitive history of Dr. Collip and all that surrounds him in this wonderful field of insulin. We also have with us from the University of Toronto, Professor Christopher Rutty. Chris, are you there, Chris? Professor Rutty is an adjunct professor in the Dalla Lana School of Public Health. He's a medical historian, health heritage consultant. Many of the things that you see, like the Health Minute on television, the Diabetes Minute, he had his hand in that very much so, along with Dr. Lee. So he's consulting with companies that work in this field and providing the historical background, a consultant and researcher. And also, we welcome from Diabetes Canada, which you know is an organization that promotes research, funding, education for diabetes, a very important organization. So from their headquarters in Toronto, we have Sean Gibson. Sean, are you there? From Diabetes Canada. Now, the monument that you will see after a little bit, we'll keep the surprise for a bit. The monument is largely there thanks to some very generous donations by two of the world's largest biopharmaceutical companies. And we're so honored today to have from those companies representatives to share in our celebrations today. So I'd like to introduce from Sanofi Canada, Doug Danielle. Sanofi Canada is part of the global Sanofi Pasteur company, a worldwide company involved in the research into COVID-19. The company is involved in that, manufacturing vaccines for many illnesses, etc., and research and development, a very, very large company. And also another company, Novo Nordisk, which is a Danish company, a global Danish company, which has a branch in Canada. And we're welcoming Adam Marbella. Adam? This company is so large, they produce about 50% of the world's insulin. And you could imagine millions of people, 32 million people around the world that they're dealing with. And they make the insulin pen, and they've produced over 1 billion insulin pens. So these people are saving lives. Their work, their research, both companies very much saving lives. So with those introductions and welcomes, we're so pleased to have you folks coming to our town and to our event. I would like to invite to the podium the Mayor of the City of Belleville, His Worship, Mayor Mitch Panciuk.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Richard, and thank you for all the work that's gone into this. I also want to say a thank you to everyone for joining us this morning on this wonderful day in the City of Belleville. The weather is a little bit soggy, and normally we would see the Bayshore Trail here teeming with people exercising out for a walk, and I think this is an ideal location for this monument. It's such a pleasure for all of us on Belleville City Council to have you join us to celebrate the official opening of this wonderful new community space. And I want to take a moment to introduce my colleagues from Belleville City Council. Joining us today, if I can get you to all stand and we'll recognize you at once, Councillor Paul Carr, Councillor Carol Feeney, Councillor Sean Kelly, Councillor Chris Millette, and Councillor Bill Sanderson. Councillor Thompson was with us this morning at the reception, but thank you very much for joining us. Welcome. I also want to say a very special welcome to MP-elect Ryan Williams, our provincial member of Parliament for the Bay of Quinte riding Todd Smith, and all of the members, as I said, of Belleville City Council, both past and present, who are with us today. Also, Hastings County Warden Rick Phillips, welcome. Thank you for being with us. And a very special thank you for coming to my good friend Mayor Brian Ostrander from the municipality of Brighton with his wife Tammy. Thank you for joining us as well. You know, it is so great to have with us this morning Dr. Alison Lee and Professor Ruddy, who really have helped the world understand more about someone who we are so proud of. And I would like to also, just as well as Richard, I'd like to pay a special welcome, mention, and welcome to all of the Collip family members who have joined us this morning. Thank you for making the trek from San Antonio. It is an honor to have you with us here this morning. It's a direct connection for us to Dr. Collip. And lastly, I just want to say a very special thank you to the members of the Dr. Collip Memorial Committee. These individuals originated the concept of this monument and raised substantial funds for it. So Roli Tipper, Richard Hughes, and Ian Sullivan, and all of your assistants, thank you so very much for it. And we do want to also say a thank you to the of Canada's producers of insulin for their very, very generous contributions. And I do want to make a point of our own Eric Kolga, who lives here in Belleville and who was part of that company that helps produce insulin for the world. If you came here earlier this week, I think you would be amazed by the transformation that's occurred behind me. We have to say thank you, a big thank you to the wonderful staff of the City of Belleville who have made this happen. Not just those in my office in terms of Mary Ann Kerr and Martha McSherry, but also those who have helped today construct the monument. Roland, Brown Cave, and all the staff under the direction of Operations General Manager Joe Reed. Thank you all for helping make today come together. Ladies and gentlemen, through the 205-year history of Belleville, there have been many residents who have made significant contributions to our city, to Ontario, to Canada, and indeed the world. But today, we are gathering to recognize a Belleville resident who, more than any other, has made the greatest contribution to mankind, and that being Dr. James Bertram Collip. Born in what is now known as Belleville's Ward 2 or Thurlow Ward, James Bertram Collip was born on November 20th, 1892, and he grew up like so many of our children of that era, helping his family with farm work. In fact, Bert Collip worked with his family selling vegetables and flowers and delivering them using horse and wagon, and he could be also found in our downtown farmers market and his father's flower shop on Front Street. For young James Collip, school started close at home in a one-room country school, and then he went on to attend Belleville High School before doing what so many Belleville children still do today. He moved away to the University of Toronto to further his education. He never did return to that rural lifestyle of his youth, but he always remembered his Belleville roots. Today, we remember Dr. Collip as one of our own, who changed the world for the better. Shortly, you will hear of the tremendous work he did wherever he went, and the increased responsibility he held in the medical research field, and how we all benefit from that today. While obviously his work on insulin, on the team with Professor McLeod, Dr. Banting, and Charles Best is the most popular, his work with hormone therapy and research touches even more people. In fact, by the year 2000, Collip's original research led to the top-selling prescription drug in all of North America. Not bad for a Belleville boy. Our special guest this morning, Dr. Alison Lee, who has written the definitive biography on Dr. Collip, will bring the full history of his amazing achievements. So suffice it for me to say that we are so very proud of this boy who got his start right here in present-day Thurlow Ward in the city of Belleville. He has had a direct impact on the lives of millions of people around the world, from the discovery of insulin in 1922 right to today, 100 years later. What a tremendous legacy and a proud occurrence that we are all grateful to share with him and his family. You know, personally, I am also very proud to share something with Dr. Collip that is a little bit extra special. We're both proud graduates of the University of Alberta, where he finished his doctorate degree while being a lecturer in biochemistry. And I'm wearing my University of Alberta tie on this occasion to honor that. Actually, Collip was on a Rockefeller Traveling Fellowship in January 1912 when he was visiting, 1922, when he was visiting the University of Toronto and his work with Insulin occurred. So I'm not just proud as a resident of Belleville or as the mayor of Belleville, but I'm also proud to share as a fellow alumni of that great institution. Thank you to everyone who helps keep the contribution of Dr. James Collip alive. Thank you all for attending today's dedication as we remind everyone that residents of Belleville are able to change the world. Dr. James Bertram Collip certainly shows us what is possible. As I said, the millions of lives his work has directly saved and prolonged clearly proves just how important he was and continues to be today to the human race. What an incredible contribution and what a lasting legacy to leave. What a credit to our community. Today is a proud day for the City of Belleville as we celebrate the accomplishment of one of our own. Once again, thank you to all the volunteers for their efforts to remember this important living link to Belleville's history. Thank you to Belleville City Council for funding this memorial, and thank you to everyone who has traveled for today's dedication. I'm sure Dr. Collip would be proud and appreciative today because we are so proud to unveil this special tribute where we can pause and take a moment in our busy city of Belleville to remember and appreciate this incredible man. Each and every day I'm reminded about how Belleville has become such an incredible community. It is such a wonderful place to live due to the work of those who came before us. Dr. Collip is one of those amazing individuals who's made the world in Belleville a better place. His memory lives on through us, and these types of reminders, let us always remember this great man. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to pick up on one small point, if you'd been here 3 days ago, what is behind us now, the beautiful lawns, the beautiful flowers, the beautiful everything, it wasn't there 3 days ago. And that's why I might point out that this fence rope here, that we can't cross the rope because that's all freshly laid, etc. But we'll come to that later. Now I'd like to call on our member of the Provincial Parliament, the Honourable Todd Smith, Minister of Children, Community and Social Services. That's quite a mouthful, isn't it? And MPP for the Bay of Quinte for the last 7 years, Honourable Todd Smith.
Well, thanks very much, Richard. I'm actually the Minister of Energy now, which is much shorter and easier to say than the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services. That's why I asked for that one. It's just a shorter. Anyway, beautiful day. I thought it was quite funny, actually, when Richard was introducing us all to each other and mentioned what a great day it is by the bay here, eh? And I couldn't help but thinking that our Texans would probably enjoy that eh coming out of Mr. Hughes's mouth because how you all doing anyway? Anyway, it is a great day and good to see you all. And congratulations, Mayor, and those who worked so hard in making this day happen. I can recall about 18 months ago when I had a meeting over in my office, virtually, of course. This was right at the start of the pandemic. And boy, he's worked so hard on this. It's just a shame that he can't be here today. He worked so hard on it, he blew his gallbladder out, apparently. But Roli Tipper did an amazing job in bringing this to my attention, and Richard and the Historical Society, and of course Ian as well, who's worked so hard on the committee to make today happen. I was sitting there as they were talking about Dr. Collip and making a lasting memorial here at the park, and it's amazing when you get hardworking people like that, how they can make something happen in such a short time. And you know, Joe Reed has never created a cure for insulin, but man, he can put a park together in a hurry, can't he? I mean, good work to the entire crew. But during that meeting that we had that day, I was recalling, and you want to talk about a lot of a long title, I was the Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade when we were first meeting. And I was thinking about a meeting that I had with my good friend Doug Daniel, who's here from Sanofi, Canada. And I mentioned to the gentleman, I said, this is a guy you should probably call. I had recently been there, and they were completing an expansion at their massive compound up there in the north end of Toronto, and all of the good work that they're doing there. But part of the tour that Doug took me on that day was the actual horse stable that Dr. Collip and the other doctors that were involved in creating insulin would have worked in. They had taken it from the downtown area, moved it up to the northern campus of Sanofi, and I thought, this is pretty amazing. And I was quite proud as a guy from Belleville walking through that facility to know that Dr. Collip had once worked in this horse stable and created the cure, or at least a treatment for diabetes. Quite remarkable. So, of course, when I suggested that to these gentlemen, the first thing they did was call Doug. And of course, Doug put them in touch with all kinds of different people who made this happen. When I walked into my Ministry of Energy office earlier this week, there was a card sitting there from the committee just thanking me for introducing them to Doug and the Sanofi team and seeing where this could go. So I'm so happy to be here today, proud to be here today, and it's amazing when you got a bunch of hardworking people together to make something like this happen. It's an incredible thing for our city, it's an incredible thing for our region, Bay of Quinte, our province, our country, and indeed, as was mentioned by the mayor, this was an impact felt around the world. So we should all be very proud today. It's so great that we were able to have the family here from Texas. You know, that just makes it that much more personal. And so it really is great to have the folks here from Texas. So glad you could be a part of it. Thanks to all of you for coming out today and marking this very historical occasion for our city. Thanks very much, Mayor. Thanks, Richard.
Yes, and thank you for coming out. You know, the current government was elected before COVID, and I'm sure they had a lot of plans and a lot of things on their mind. And for the last year and a half, totally derailed, I guess. And it's been a COVID government, but working very hard on it. We do recognize that. So, as I say, Bert Collip was actually born in Thurlow Township, which is a part of Hastings County. At that point, was not a part of the city. So we're very honored to have with us today the Warden of Hastings County. This is a very dynamic county which stretches from these shores 130 kilometers north, the second largest county in all of Ontario, and one of the most beautiful, stretching from the flatlands here up into the highlands of Hastings. So it's a very beautiful area to call home. So I'd ask Rick Phillips to come forward and say a few words.
Thank you, Richard, for that introduction, Mayor Panciuk, and all of the guests that have assembled here today. Good morning, everyone. First, let me thank everyone who worked so hard on this project to honor Dr. James Bertram Collip, and also for asking me to play a very small but a very important part of this very special event. Our area has produced many individuals over many years who have played an important part in the history of our great country. None of those people is more important than Dr. James Bertram Collip. He was born in Belleville on November the 2nd, 1892, and grew up in the former township of Thurlow. The year 2021 marks the 100th anniversary of the discovery of insulin, in which Dr. Collip played a huge part. The discovery has saved millions of lives around the world and was instrumental in Canada being awarded its first Nobel Prize. His notable career included the establishment of internationally renowned research facilities at McGill University and the University of Western Ontario, and he also received his PhD in biochemistry from the University of Toronto. Dr. Collip had an extremely productive career as a medical researcher and professor, and is recognized as one of the great figures in Canadian medicine. Dr. Collip will be inducted in Canada's Walk of Fame for his contribution to Canada and to the world. In closing, and on behalf of the County of Hastings, thank you everyone once again for arranging such a wonderful event. for a very important man who accomplished so much on our behalf. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for coming out. Warden of Hastings County, Rick Phillips, and a good friend of history, a very strong supporter of all matters in this area relating to history. Now, a few weeks ago, I had the honor of being on the broadcast of the election night for the cable television network, and broadcasting the results as they come in. And it was really quite an exciting night with the numbers going up and the numbers going down. But we're very pleased to have with us tonight the man who ended up with the biggest numbers at the end of the night. Yes. And whoops, sorry. That's a Hastings County insect bothering me. But, yeah, just for me. Anyways, it was a very exciting election. He's going to, new at the member of parliament job, but I understand from hearing you on the radio recently, you're learning a lot and learning it fast. And so we welcome you to. I don't know if this is your first big public event, but we welcome you and would invite you to say a few words. Mr. Ryan Williams, MP-elect.
Thank you very much, Richard, and it is a pleasure to be here. This is actually my first event. I haven't even been sworn in yet. We're figuring it all out as we go. We say it's like drinking from a fire hose, but I had the distinct honor of being on Belleville City Council when we approved this, and as the mayor stated, this was a council initiative, and Mr. Hughes and, of course, Roli Tipper came to present this, and I'll have to admit, we knew the importance of that when it came to council. We knew how great and momentous this individual was to Belleville into the area, but it wasn't until you read more about it, just how important Mr. Collip was, and what I would determine as an unsung hero in Canada. And of course, when we talk about teams and we talk about heroes, sometimes we don't recognize all the top heroes, and we see that through COVID. The amount of people that are putting their lives in danger and those that are in the front line during COVID, we have a lot of unsung heroes, and I would say that Dr. Collip was the complete unsung hero. Part of a team, contributed immensely to that team. They say that Dr. Banning was the captain, but Dr. Collip scored the touchdown when it came to discovering insulin. And the more that you read about it and read about Dr. Collip, how just incredibly amazed I am and how proud I am that Dr. Collip was a Bellevillian and part of Bay of Quinte, and of course everything that he contributed not just to this area, but of course to Alberta, and to McGill, and to the rest of Canada. When I was up in Ottawa, I'm driving around, and I'm still lost all the time. I ended up, I think, in Commons one day through a corn dome and had my car searched, and it wasn't even where it was supposed to be. But this is what happens in your first couple of weeks. But I did end up on Banting Drive one day, and you noticed that. I knew I was coming down to this week. And, I know that there's the Banting Institute for Diabetes in London, and there isn't a Collip. But as we enter the 100 years of discovery of insulin and how important it is for Canada, I will be talking about Dr. Collip in Ottawa in front of the rest of my Canadians, and I'll be talking about just the importance, and of course the importance of an unsung hero and how that team contribution plays out for all of Canada and all of the world. And at the end of the day, I think an unsung hero that today is now sung is incredibly important, not just for Dr. Collip and his family, and it's great to have them all here, but for the continued research of diabetes, they continue to talk about scientists, and I think Dr. Collip was even, what I talk about all the time, a great entrepreneur, selling door to door back in Albert Street back in the day. But again, a great individual for Canada. What a great day today to see an unsung hero sung, and thank you very much, and we'll continue to talk about him as the year goes by. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's the first of many, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyways, so now we talked about how the committee brought this forward a couple of years ago, but of course this story goes back a long ways because going back 12 years ago, if you met anybody in the city of Belleville and said, do you know Dr. Bert Collip, they'd give you a blank stare. Many still do. But the point is, it's come a long way, and a lot of this, what has been happened over those 12 years, all began with one person. And I'm going to ask Ian Sullivan, my colleague on the Collip Committee, to tell us about the rather amazing work done and how the ball started to rolling with a very wonderful man who's no longer with us, sadly, Dr. George Pearce. So Ian Sullivan will give you a story of how this all began.
Thank you, Dick. And I'll start actually by expressing my personal regret that Roli is not here today. Roli and I started this, was a gleam in our eye about 2 years ago, and we've carried it forward with the help of a lot of people like the mayor and Todd and many other people. But there is no question that Roli has been the engine that has been driving it. And those of you who, like me, get a dozen emails at 6 a.m. in the morning and know exactly what I'm talking about. So it's sad and ironic, but we wish him all the best, and we're continuing on in his honor as well. But there's somebody else we want to talk about. We're gathered here today to honor and commemorate Dr. James Bertram Collip, described as one of the great minds of Canadian medicine. However, we would like to take a moment to honor someone who couldn't be here today, but who planted the seed that has now blossomed into today's event. And as Dick said, that's Dr. George Arnold Pearce. He was a respected and popular Belleville family physician who died on October 14, 2020, almost exactly a year ago. It's kind of ironic, but Dr. Pearce became aware that Dr. Collip was largely unknown and certainly unrecognized in his hometown. Following his retirement, Dr. Pearce became an enthusiastic promoter of and advocate for Dr. Collip. He did extensive travel and research and amassed an archive of articles, documents, and information relating to Dr. Collip, which he donated to the Historical Society archives. He was a driving force behind the delegation to Belleville Council, which resulted in November 20 being declared in perpetuity as Dr. Collip Day in Belleville. He was a member of the Dr. James B. Collip Recognition Committee, which applied for and obtained the Ontario Heritage Trust plaque erected on the plaza at the Belleville Public Library, and which published the Dr. James Bertram Collip booklet, which has been distributed to all the local schools and is available both at the Society, Historical Society, and in the library. And I have a copy of that over there, but I'll wave that to you later. It's not an exaggeration to say that without Dr. Pearce, we might not be here today. We are pleased that his widow, Mary, now Mary, where are you? Mary is here with us. And one of his sons, Bruce, is here with us. And we're pleased that you're with us today to share this day. In 2012, in an interview with a local newspaper, Dr. Pearce expressed his hope that the City of Belleville would one day consider an historical monument to Dr. Collip. We are pleased to report that that day has arrived, thanks in part to the efforts of Dr. George Arnold Pearce. The role of Roli Tipper for this performance will be played by Ian Sullivan. And I have, Roli has given me his words, and I will do my best to honor my commitment to him to read them word for word. So, when our committee began its work in April 2019, our first order of business was to establish, with the Quinte Regional Science and Technology Fair, 2 annual Dr. James B. Collip Awards of Excellence in Science. Due to COVID, there was no fair in 2020. But this past spring, a virtual version of the fair was held, and so we have in attendance 2 of the inaugural winners. One of them, Rihanna Harris, is about to come forward and speak to us about the importance of heroes like Dr. Collip in inspiring us at any age in life to reach higher, try harder, and do your best with the talents you have been given for the betterment of mankind. Rihanna is an 11-year-old grade 6 student enrolled in the Destinations program at Queen Elizabeth School. She has spent 7 years of her young life off and on at Sick Children's Hospital in Toronto due to asthma and various suspected cancers. Her award-winning science project was aided by a contact with a research doctor at Queen's University. It was entitled The Future for Cancer Patients. Rihanna, would you please come up?
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Sure. Make yourself comfy.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. We are gathered here today to celebrate the extraordinary Dr. J.B. Collip, as we are approaching the 100th year anniversary of the discovery of insulin. It is a perfect time to reflect on the inspiration that happens around us and in the communities we live in. Dr. J.B. Collip was born right here in the City of Belleville, a community where I attend school. I am currently enrolled at the Destinations program at Queen Elizabeth School here in Belleville. As a young woman with dreams of entering the medical field one day, I find Dr. Collip to be inspirational. Knowing that a former student in Belleville was able to make such a global impact on so many people's lives is truly inspiring. I look around our community and where we live, looking for inspiration and marvel at the wonderful world we live in. I am a firm believer that anything is possible and that every person has a meaningful role to play in our community. That we can look upon our neighbors and fellow community members and be inspired. Dr. Collip has done just that, inspire. Dr. Collip has made a huge impact on human health and a difference in patients' lives. I think about the people I know with diabetes, and I think about all the children I met while a patient at Sick Kids Hospital for a number of years, and how someone like Dr. Collip was able to help so many people, and how we can continue to make a difference in discovery in the medical field.
Thank you. Thank you, Rihanna. And speaking of inspiration, I would like to suggest that based upon what you have shared with us today and knowing your personal history, you too are a great inspiration. We wish you only the very best and greatest of success in your future endeavors, and thanks again. And now, well, the moment everyone's been waiting for, our keynote speaker, Dr. Alison Lee. "99 years from today and 100 years ago, i.e. on January 23rd, 1922, a 60-pound 13-year-old, one Leonard Thompson, lay near death in a diabetic coma from diabetes at Toronto General Hospital. His story was typical of multitudes of youth and young adults of that day. Enter Dr. Collip and his purified strain of insulin, which he developed in a lab in the University of Toronto while working alone late at night, as he preferred, just a few days before. It saved the life of Thompson and hundreds and thousands of other diabetics in the weeks and months to follow, and multiple millions of diabetics around the world in the decades since. If that was the only chapter in Dr. Collip's remarkable medical and scientific research career to be written, it would be worthy enough. But there are many other equally important chapters in this man's story, in his long and accomplished professional life. And to talk about them this morning with knowledge, skill, and much enthusiasm, we are very fortunate to have with us Dr. Alison Lee, an historian of science and medicine based in Toronto, and by all accounts the medical historical expert on our Dr. Collip. We are also grateful to Alison for her donation of 2 copies of her 2005 book, J.B. Collip and the Development of Medical Research in Canada, which she graciously donated to both the Belleville Public Library and the Quinte West Public Library. Dr. Lee has made the journey this weekend from her home in Toronto, accompanied by her husband, Professor Ernie Ham, and her son, David. Please help me in welcoming our keynote speaker to the stage, Dr. Alison Lee.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction and warm welcome.
Late one wintry night, almost 100 years ago, James Bertram Collip was doing what he loved best, working alone in his lab in the quiet, still hours. At home, his wife, Ray, his young daughter, Margaret, his new baby, Barbara, and his sister-in-law, Maud, were all down with the flu. So Collip was sent to sleep on a cot in the lab at the University of Toronto. For the previous 6 weeks, he had been immersed in the problem of diabetes mellitus. Diabetes was then relatively rare, but when it was diagnosed in childhood, it was rapidly and inevitably fatal. People with diabetes experienced ravenous hunger, fierce thirst, frequent urination, and a characteristic presence of sugar in their urine. The state-of-the-art treatment for diabetes was a strict starvation diet. But even when patients adhered to this diet, they eventually wasted away because their bodies were unable to use the nutrients they took in. Those who were diagnosed in childhood could expect to live only 1 or 2 years. A few months before this, a surgeon named Frederick Banting had managed to convince Professor J.J.R. MacLeod at the University of Toronto that he had come up with a new approach to finding a secretion of the pancreas that he thought might be used to treat diabetes. Despite Banting's lack of research experience, MacLeod agreed to give him lab space, Charles Best as a student assistant, supplies, and animals to test his idea. By the autumn of 1921, they had managed to make a pancreatic extract that lowered the blood sugar of dogs that had been made diabetic. They had not, however, done anything that had not already been accomplished and published by other researchers. There had, in fact, been already some 400 attempts by other scientists to make just such an extract, several of which had achieved as much or more than the Toronto team had by that date. The problem with all of these extracts was they caused terrible side effects, such as fevers, tremors, and abscesses. What no one had been able to do to date was to make an extract that was pure enough that it could be used safely and continuously in human beings. What the Toronto team needed now was a good biochemist. Enter Bert Collip. Collip was a professor of biochemistry and physiology at the University of Alberta. That year, he was in Toronto on sabbatical leave. MacLeod invited Collip to join their research team in December. At the age of 29, Collip was already a seasoned experimentalist, so he quickly found ways to speed up the process. In the early hours of January 19th, he mashed pancreatic tissue, washed, filtered, and centrifuged it, and added increasingly concentrated solutions of alcohol to remove contaminants. When he raised the alcohol level to 90%, a white precipitate materialized. As one colleague later put it, Collip then actually saw insulin. 4 days later, this new extract was tested on Leonard Thompson, a 13-year-old boy who had diabetes, and the results were clear. Thompson felt stronger, brighter, and more active, and his blood sugar fell to normal levels. In a stunning 42 days, Collip had accomplished what had eluded other researchers for decades. Then, thanks to the collaboration of many, many more people, researchers in physiology, medicine, and pharmacology, the staff at the Connaught Laboratories, and the pharmaceutical company Eli Lilly of Indianapolis, a network of clinicians, not to mention a host of slaughterhouse workers who had to learn how to painstakingly harvest mountains of beef and pork pancreases, insulin was made successfully mass-produced by the following year. In October 1923, Banting and MacLeod were awarded the Nobel Prize for the discovery of insulin, Canada's first Nobel Prize. Banting immediately announced that he would share his award with Best, and MacLeod declared that he would share his with Collip, to indicate that Collip's role had been equal with that of the others. Since then, insulin has meant that many millions of people living with diabetes have had a chance to live long, active lives. Your Worship, Mayor Panciuk, honored guests, it's a great joy and privilege for me to be with you on this wonderful occasion as you, the people of his hometown, pay tribute to James Bertram Collip. I especially congratulate the members of the Collip Memorial Committee, Roli Tipper, Richard Hughes, and Ian Sullivan, for their tremendous efforts that they and the late Dr. George Pearce have made in recognizing Collip here in Belleville. Collip received many honorary degrees and awards in his lifetime, but has never become the household name that Banting and Best have. But historians such as Michael Bliss, in his 1982 book, The Discovery of Insulin, have begun to change that by showing that insulin was the result of the teamwork of Banting, Best, Collip, and MacLeod, and arguing that Collip probably should have been awarded the Nobel Prize along with Banting and MacLeod. Of Collip's many accomplishments, his contribution to the discovery of insulin, without doubt, is the one that has made the most impact on medical science and on the lives of individuals. But this should in no way lead us to think of his other contributions as mere afterthoughts. He was, without doubt, one of the major medical researchers in Canada in the middle of the 20th century. And it is these other achievements that I would like to tell you a little bit about now. The qualities that characterized Collip's life were forged right here in his childhood in Belleville. The virtues of decency and integrity, ambition and collaboration, and underlying it all, hard work and a quiet humility. Collip was born November 20th, 1892, the first child of Mahala Vance, a schoolteacher, and James Dennis Collip, a florist. He was an only child for his first 8 years, until the birth of his sister Rita. His grandfather ran a market garden, so in his early years, Bert earned money by selling vegetables from a horse and cart, as you have heard, and as we saw in the market. We saw the market as we came here this morning. He attended a one-room country schoolhouse and later Belleville High School. His father grew his florist business so that he became one of the principal florists in the district, with a large sales room at 265 Front Street and 2 greenhouses in the second concession of Thurlow Township. Bert, however, had other ambitions. He developed a keen interest in chemistry and a wish to go to university. At the age of 15, he enrolled at Trinity College at the University of Toronto. He had wanted to go into medicine, but he was too young to enter at that time, so he instead enrolled in the rigorous honors physiology and biochemistry program, which was a program designed to create an elite stream of medical students who were trained in scientific research. Collip graduated at the top of his class, and because he was inspired so much by the research ideal of his professor, A.B. McCallum, he decided to pursue graduate research instead of medicine. Collip soon learned that the professor checked in on the lab at about 11 or 12 o'clock every night. So he tried to make a good impression by making sure he was always there at that time. And as a result, he came to recognize that those quiet hours were the most productive for lab work, and out of that came his lifelong habit. During his years at Trinity, Bert also noticed a certain contralto in the chapel choir. He was too shy to act on his own behalf, so it was a classmate who had to intervene to introduce him to the vibrant and fun-loving Ray Ralph, a young woman who was studying at Trinity's sister college, St. Hilda's. And it was said in the family that Ray was the one who had climbed the windows to visit Bert. In 1915, just before he completed his PhD, Collip was hired as a lecturer in biochemistry at the University of Alberta, When he arrived in Edmonton, he was just 22 years old and boyish looking. A few months later, he blushed when his students congratulated him on his marriage to Ray. During the Great War, Collip was responsible for all the teaching in his department, so that left little time for research. But in the spring of 1921, he was granted a sabbatical leave and a Rockefeller Foundation traveling fellowship that allowed him to visit labs in Canada, the US, and Britain. So that spring, Collip and his young family made their way to Toronto, which was their first stop, not realizing that this sabbatical was about to change their lives. Collip's sabbatical, of course, resulted in his being in the right place at the right time, just when MacLeod and Banting needed a good biochemist. We get a sense of what this remarkable period meant to Collip in a letter that he wrote that December. He said, "I have never had such an absolutely satisfactory experience before, namely going in a logical way from point to point into an unexplored field, building absolutely solid structure all the way. To be associated in an intimate way with the solution of a problem which for years has resisted all efforts was something I had never anticipated." Unfortunately, at times, tensions among the members of the Insulin team ran high, and there were reports of angry confrontations breaking out as Banting grew worried that Collip and MacLeod might claim all the credit. But in the months after their great breakthrough, the four discoverers and many other workers had to pull together to tackle the mammoth task of mass-producing insulin. My colleague Christopher Ruddy will be telling us more about this later. Collip, Banting, and Best took out a patent on insulin, and they assigned it to the university for the sum of $1. And the university managed the patent in a concerted effort to guarantee access to anyone who needed insulin. Collip returned to Alberta in the May of 1922 as full professor and head of biochemistry. Insulin would prove to be a watershed in his life. Before, he had been interested in a wide range of topics in biochemistry. After, he would focus exclusively on isolating other hormones that, like insulin, were of value in treating disease. Although he already had a PhD, he decided he would take his medical degree as well, which meant that he sometimes had to take classes right alongside his own students. Two significant events of 1924 were the birth of his son John and the isolation of the parathyroid hormone. In 1928, Collip was appointed chair of biochemistry at McGill University in Montreal. These were truly his great years. At McGill, he headed a large, thriving team that produced work of international significance with over 200 publications on pituitary and placental hormones. Collip and his team played a leading role in this exciting and highly competitive period, which has been called the heroic age of reproductive endocrinology. In the lab, Collip loved spending long hours standing at his still, brewing extracts from large vats of glands. Visitors were met with the rancid smell of caprylic acid and the deafening roar of a high vacuum pump. Collip, who his team called the Chief, rushed back and forth adjusting this or that mixture, smoking large hand-rolled cigarettes all the while. His daughter Barbara, the grandmother of Major Wyatt, and the great-great-grandparents of his children, also spent a lot of time in the lab during her childhood. When her father was called away to the telephone, she was sometimes left to tend a brew with a little eyedropper in hand with the instruction not to let the important stuff boil over. Many researchers passed through the lab and they flourished in the atmosphere of enthusiasm and productivity. In 1930, Collip isolated a form of estrogen called eminin, which had great commercial significance because it could be taken by mouth. Collip's collaboration with the small pharmaceutical firm Ayers, McKenna, and Harrison would lead directly to the development of the estrogen compound called Premarin. Premarin, you may know, is used in hormone replacement therapy, and by the end of the 20th century, it would become the top-selling prescription product in the world. Over the years, Collip became reconciled with Banting, and both regretted their unfortunate misunderstandings of the insulin days. In 1938, when Banting was made head of a committee on medical research for the National Research Council of Canada, he asked Collip to join as one of its first members. Collip would be the last friend to see Banting before his tragic death in a plane crash. After Banting's death, Collip assumed the mantle of overseeing medical research during the Second World War. After the war, he continued to take a leading role in shaping the coordination and funding of medical research across Canada. In 1947, Collip became Dean of Medicine at the University of Western Ontario in London, and there he enjoyed the challenge of building up its medical school in an era of rapid expansion. Collip was famous for his restless nature and for the speed with which he thought, spoke, and made decisions. He was especially fond of driving, and his students would remember car trips with the chief as a sort of low form of flying. In the medical students' skit night at Western, they would depict the dean's departure by tossing a handful of gravel against the wall. Collip died of a stroke in 1965 at the age of 72, 2 days after arriving home from yet another of his famous cross-country driving trips with his wife, Ray. When it came to insulin, Collip would always modestly say he had only done what any good biochemist would have done. But what is even more to the point is that he always recognized that the endeavor had been a collaborative one. He explained it this way: although I have been guilty of using the word discovery on occasion myself, generally I do not like it. Most so-called discoveries represent simply the last but important step in a long series of previous steps, representing contributions of many others through the years in the scientist's search for truth. So today, as we celebrate Collip's life and career, let us remember his hard work and his quiet humility, his thrill in scientific exploration, and most of all, his deep sense that he was taking part in a collective enterprise in the search for truth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alison Lee. We've, many of us have done a lot of reading, but to hear it delivered by the person who has written the definitive book, who has immense knowledge, is just absolutely refreshing. It's absolutely exciting to hear you deliver that. Thank you so very, very much. Now, according to my notes, many of you will have noticed the temperature's dropping and the breeze is coming up, so we've reached the end of this portion, but now we have what we came for, the unveiling of the monument. No one has seen it so far. It's been wrapped and double wrapped and guarded by our city officials in their uniforms. Yeah, right on duty there. So we're going to have, now I should mention, this rope has been put up because beyond it is fresh sod, and you'll go up to your ankles if you cross it. And this bluish colored is also seed, and it's also mucky. So we can go around this way. The walkway is clear. It's a cement walkway, and there's lots of space that way. We're going to have the official unveiling, and then we're going to have the official photography. Our official photographer, Marilyn. And so those who, those are our special guests who would want to be photographed with the monument, with the mayor, whatever. We'll do that one after the other, and then everyone can come in, or you can come and watch all of this, take a look at a close look at the monument. We can have your pictures taken in front of it, and we'll have some fun as we conclude our morning.
Very nice. Okay.